What's up, guys? Welcome to your 10th Android tutorial. No, 11th. My bad. 11th Android tutorial for the new Boston, again with me, Travis. What we're going to do in this tutorial is basically set up some resources and then set up a background image for our splash screen that we're going to create. And basically I want you guys to create some sort of background image, and it doesn't have to be perfect, like the dimensions. I'm not positive exactly which dimensions you guys will want to use. What I used for this image, I believe, was 400 by 600, and then just create something simple. It doesn't have to be beautiful or anything. Obviously this one's pretty sketchy. I just copied this off the New Boston website and then put a black background for the most part. And then make sure when you save it, it's all lowercase, and save it as like a PNG. So again, make sure the name is all lowercase. And then also you guys want to create maybe a sound that you might want to put in for our application, because we're going to add a sound as well. Make that MP3. Again, make sure everything's lowercase. Otherwise you're going to get some problems. So I created both a sound and just a quick wallpaper. And what we're going to do is basically put those in the right place that we're going to need so we can use them in Java and XML and all that good stuff. So I'm going to open up my Finder, or basically, my computer or whatever. And within here, I saved it again, the project or workspace, under Documents, and I called it the New Boston. And then we set up our project called the New Boston as well. And then we have a resource folder, and here's our drawable. That's where we're going to drag and drop this image into, our drawable high def, or basically high density per inch folder. And that's good. You can do 3 different resolutions if you guys want. I'm lazy, so I'm not going to. The other thing we want to do is do our splash or our sound into our RAR folder. And again, if you guys don't have a RAR folder, you want to set that up. Not too difficult. And there we go. We basically added resources to our project now. And again, you guys might have wanted to just drag and drop them into this actual folder. I believe that won't work. I don't think that will work. You guys actually want to go into where your workspace was located and where your project was set up, and save them there. So there you go. We added resources. If you look, they aren't added yet. What we need to do is go up to Project, the Project tab, and go to Clean. That'll kind of clean our project out a little bit. Update everything and rebuild it. There we go. We have our splash background and our splash sound. Now what we want to do is set up a new layout that's just going to have this image that we imported as the background for a splash activity. Basically what a splash activity is, it just appears for 5 seconds, tells the people your name, plays a little music, and it's over. So it's not all that important, but we want to make our app too legit to quit, if you know what I'm talking about. So what we're going to do is right click on this layout here, and then go to Other, and then under this Android folder again, we're going to click Android XML to set up a new layout. We hit Next, and then we have to label our layout, and we're going to label this Splash. And you also have to put .xml, and make sure it has the layout tab. It should, and we're good to go. We're just going to hit Finish. And there we go. We have a blank slate to work with. We're just going to do one thing, real simple. Again, we're just going into the code section. We're just going to set up this linear layout, have the background image be that resource we just added. And you guys are probably wondering, what's this match parent? Basically, it's pretty much the same thing as fill parent in this case, so you won't have to worry about it. I mean, we can change that to fill parent if you want. So basically it's going to take up the whole screen, and then we want to use the Android code called background. I wasn't completely positive, but anyways, it's called background. And then how we reference it, we're going to say @drawable. Well, let's just do it this way. Hit equals, and then @drawable /, and then our actual image name. Again, you guys if you guys didn't label these properly, if you had like a uppercase letter, it's gonna mess up your project, then you're gonna get all confused. So make sure those are lowercase, and then clean your project again. So then we're going to say @drawable and then splash undercase background is what I labeled my background image as. And if you put the PNG or the extension, you're going to get an error as well. So you don't want to put the extension on when you're referencing your your drawable folder. Now we're just going to save it and check it out. Looks pretty fantastic if you ask me. So that's a quick tutorial, basically how to set up a new layout and use the background function from the Android and also get some resources in our project. So thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next tutorial. Have a good one. What's up, guys? Welcome to your 12th Android tutorial. What we're going to do in this tutorial is set up our own activity from scratch. Homemade Java is what we're going to be doing. We're going to set up a Java class, so we're going to go up to our source folder and right click and go to new, new class right here. Hit OK, and we're going to call this Splash with a capital S. And again, I should just tell you this because since we're working with Java, it's basically good grammar for your class names to start with the uppercase letter. I didn't do that with the starting point, that our other class that we have called starting point, but general rule of thumb, you want to have it uppercase. Not a huge deal, but you know, whatever. And then we're going to hit finish. Got our class started. And now as we're just also going to open our starting point class as a reference. You guys can kind of see what we need to set up here. Now, right now it's just a Java class. It's not an activity. And Android uses activities. They're basically like different tabs. For example, this is a tab, and then this is a tab. Think of this as an activity for the most part. And then we can open up this activity, and it'll put that previous activity behind it. And then if we hit the back button on our phone, it opens this activity. I don't know if that made sense, but they're basically like different windows or different tabs. That's what an activity is. So we want our Splash to be an activity. So what we're going to say is extends activity. And what extends means is that we're extending the activity class. So we have to import this activity class, which comes from the android.app package, again from the SDK for the most part. So we're going to import that. And what extends means is since we're using or extending this activity class, we can use some of the methods from within that activity class. Now let's go back to the starting point, and we notice that we have this method called onCreate. So we're going to add that real quickly by right-clicking within the brackets, going down to the source, and then going to override implement methods. Click that. And as you can see, here's our activity class that we're extending, and we can use all these methods from within that activity class. There's a method called onCreate, which you guys saw in our starting point activity. So we're going to click this and make sure it's the one that takes a bundle within its parameters. Click OK, and we have our activity for the most part set up, at least our onCreate method set up. And now basically I kind of want to quickly talk on the Java. Just kind of give you guys a little bit better understanding of what's going on. Public, just think of that meaning that it's accessible by other classes or other, for the most part, other classes. If it was private, for the most part, it wouldn't be able to be accessed by those other classes. And again, we're setting up a class. Again, that might be a confusing word for new Java programmers, but basically a class defines certain things. I'll get into that explanation later as we go. Just know that this is a class, what we're setting up. All these are classes over here under our package, and we're extending the activity class so we can use this method called onCreate. Now anytime you guys see void, that basically means that it's going to be a method. We're using a method. So when you see void, just think of a method for the most part. And this method is called onCreate, and what it takes within its parameters is a bundle. So this is just like a variable we set up. So we could change this bundle to something like Travis loves bacon. Again, we're just renaming the variable, and then we're sending that variable to the superclass for the most part, and giving it some data. So we need to change our variable down here to Travis love bacon. I guess it's supposed to be Travis loves bacon, but it's just Travis love bacon. That's my middle name and my last name, love bacon. But there we go. So basically we're sending this bundle into our super class. You guys don't really need to worry about what super is, since again it sets it up for you, but as you guys get into Java you'll realize what that is actually doing. It's using the method onCreate. Just don't worry about that. Okay, now the other thing that we want to do for this activity is set up the content view. This is how we're going to let this activity have the background of our layout that we just set up called splash. So to do that, we use the method called SetContentView, and within the parameters we're going to reference that splash layout by going r.layout.splash, and then we just need our semicolon and we're good to go. Basically our activity will load up that new splash, and I'll show you guys how we can basically well, just watch the next tutorial where we're going to get into the Android manifest. Again, thanks guys for watching. Hope you have a good one. Hope that somewhat made sense, and catch you then. Peace. What's up, my gangsters? Welcome to your 13th Android tutorial, again with me, Travis, for the New Boston. What we're going to do in this tutorial is basically work with the Android manifest to get the splash activity to launch first. Now, if we run an activity or application right now, it's just going to show this activity that we created a few tutorials ago, and it's not even going to recognize our splash activity, and our splash activity is going to get super depressed if he never gets recognized. So we're going to hook him up in the Android manifest. So I want you guys to open that up, and if it looks like this, I want you to go over to this right tab where we go into the actual XML code, and as you can see, here's our application bracket, and within our application bracket we have the activity bracket, and this basically defines our activity and gives it some action names within an intent filter. You guys probably don't even care, or you don't even really need to know what an intent filter is for the moment, but basically it adds some reference points and some stuff to it for the most part. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy that activity and paste it below, and we're going to change some things around because we want the splash activity or a splash class to start first. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the Android name from starting point to our class name called splash. And this is case sensitive, so make sure you spell it exactly how you spelled your class name. And now this is going to be what launches first, because we have this launcher intent for the most part, or within the intent filter under our category name. So that's what it's going to look for when our application starts. It's going to look for this launcher item and then see where that is, what activity that's located in. And it's going to be like, oh, the splash activity, let's start that up. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And so that's what's going to happen. But the problem is, right now we have two launcher items, one for starting point and one for splash. So we need to get rid of the launcher on our starting point and just let the starting point chill a little bit. Just relax, wait till he needs, until we need him for the most part. So we're going to say default, from launcher to default. And you guys need to spell that correctly, all uppercase. And that's basically just going to recognize that our activity is there, but it's not going to do anything until we tell it to do anything. So that's what that is. The action name we're also going to change, because when we actually want our starting point to start, or starting point activity to start, we're going to call the action name and start it that way. So a good way to keep track of all of your action names is type out your package name. So com.thenewboston.travis, and then dot, and then basically your class name in all uppercase. So starting point. Starting to lose my voice, I'm sorry, but that's how we're going to define our action name. And again, we can refer to this action name to start up our starting point class or activity when we want to. So there we go. Now pretty much everything is set up. Hopefully you guys kind of get an understanding of, for the most part, what the action name is. I shouldn't refer to this one. This is just kind of this is kind of what the phone is looking for as well when it starts up the launcher item. But as for the action name and setting it to either default or a launcher item, So there you go. That's basically the end of this tutorial. Let's check it out and make sure it works. So we're going to run it on the emulator real quick, and hopefully we'll get our splash screen to come up instead of our starting point. It looks like we did. So mission accomplished, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Have a good one. Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to your 14th Android tutorial, and what we're going to do in this tutorial is work within our splash activity. Basically, we want the splash activity to sleep for 5 seconds and then open up a new activity, basically our starting point activity. And we're going to accomplish this by using a thread. Now, I want to show you guys threads because it's super important, especially for game development. And what threads allow you to do is do multiple things pretty much at the same time, instead of waiting for something to get done and then doing something else. So I'm just going to show you the basic framework of a thread and use the thread to execute what we want to do for our splash activity. To set up a thread, it's just basically like every other variable we've set up. We define what type it is, and it's going to be of the type thread. And we're going to call this thread timer because basically it's going to be a timer that counts for 5 seconds and then starts an activity. Now, how we're going to set this thread up is basically create a new thread. So we're going to say new thread. I know this is kind of you guys are probably like, what's this new thing all about? Just don't worry about that for now. It's kind of a Java thing, and we'll get into it later. For the most part, I don't want to explain what it's doing. Basically, it's just creating a new thread. Think of it like that. So just say a new thread with parentheses, and then we're going to hit an open bracket and hit enter. And before our code gets too sloppy, because we're going to have a lot of different brackets and a lot of different somewhat methods within this thread, we're going to finish off our thread definition for the most part with a semicolon, just so we don't forget later. Now, what a thread is looking for is a method called run. So we need to set up this run method within our thread that we defined. So we're going to say public. Again, public is accessible to everyone for the most part. Public void, meaning it's a method, and run with parentheses, and then we're going to set up a new pair of brackets. As you can see, the brackets are already getting kind of confusing, so I'm going to try and keep them all on the screen so you guys can make sure you're doing this right. Now, basically within our run method, we want, anytime we do something sketchy, like if you guys ever wanted to go streaking across a football game and you know, you thought that'd be awesome, so you're gonna try to do it, but you know, sometimes it wouldn't work because you get arrested. Anytime you do something sketchy in programming, you also have to use a try bracket. So we're gonna try to let our program do something for the most part, and that's what this is gonna do. And if it can't do that, we're gonna catch the exceptions, or basically if we can't do the action that we're trying to perform, most likely there's some sort of error or an exception. So we're going to try and catch those exceptions and use them for debugging. So we're going to say catch exceptions, and basically to catch exceptions you tell the computer what kind of exceptions you are looking to catch. And for this instance, we're going to say interrupted error. Or, I'm sorry, interrupted exception. What am I doing? That's the type of exception we're going to try to catch, and it's called E. Now, within this, basically, this catch again is trying to catch these type of exceptions if they pop up. You guys don't really need to know what this exception is for the most part right now. As this is mainly for debugging. So again, put a new bracket right here, and we have to import interrupted exceptions. Or actually, it's giving us an error because we aren't trying to do anything. So there's no way there's going to be any exceptions. But that will go away in the next tutorial. And there's where we're going to try and catch those exceptions. And the last thing we can do is do a finally method. So there we go. Within our run class we have a try. We're going to try to do some methods or try to do something. If we can't do those methods, or something runs, if our application's running too slow for some reason, it's going to catch the exceptions, and we can use that for debugging. Like write a note to ourselves within here so we know which thread is going slow or not working properly. And then finally we can do this method after we've done that. After we've tried something, we can do something finally. And yeah, I don't know. It's pretty okay. Basically, yeah. This is our last little chunk of code that we can use if we want to try one last method after we've done whatever we tried in these brackets. So hopefully that's not too confusing. We're going to set up what we want this thread to do in the next tutorial. But after we set up our thread, it's still not going to do anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our thread variable called timer, and to start a thread you just use the method called thread, and this, or I'm sorry, called start. This is from the thread class, so we can use this method because again it's a thread variable. So we're just going to hit start and then semicolon, and that will start our thread. Again, we haven't defined it to do anything. I just wanted to show you the framework of how you set up a thread and some of these try, catch, and finally type of things. So thanks again for watching, guys. I'll catch you in the next tutorial. Sorry, I'm getting kind of tired, so if I wasn't super enthusiastic, I apologize. So have a good day. What's up, guys? Welcome to your 15th Android tutorial for the new Boston. Again, my name's Travis. Welcome back. What we're going to do in this tutorial is basically finish up our splash activity for the most part and kind of use this thread so you guys get kind of familiar with the layout that we have set up here. Again, a thread looks for the run method, and then we're going to try to do something. If it can't do that or it messes up, we're going to catch the exception, and then we have this one last method that we can use for whatever we want. So let's get our activity going. Again, we want our activity basically to pause for 5 seconds, and we can use a method from the thread class again called sleep, and that'll allow us to just pause our thread and not do anything for however long we want for the most part. And the method is pretty easy. Just sleep like this, and what goes within its parameters is basically how many milliseconds we want it to sleep. So we're going to say 5,000 milliseconds, which is equal to 5 seconds. A little conversion lesson for you guys. You get an added bonus with this Android series, so there you go. So now our application is going to sleep for 5 seconds, and what this catch exceptions, if it can't get the interrupt, or if there's an interrupted exception of some sort, we're going to catch that. So we define that interrupted exception variable, or I'm sorry, that's the type of exception we're looking for, and we named that E. So within here we can do the standard, for the most part, catch, and that's just print stack trace. Again, you guys don't really need to know what that does. It basically just kind of throws it around. It doesn't really matter. That's for debugging. Hopefully your application will run perfectly. We won't have to worry about the exceptions. But basically all I just wanted you guys to realize is we named this variable so we can use that variable within the case for the most part. Probably doesn't make sense, sorry. So basically now our application sleeps for 5 seconds, and how are we going to start our new activity is what the question is. And where are we going to do that? Well, we could do that right below the here. So it's going to sleep for 5 seconds, then it'll go to the next line of code, and we could start our activity here. But just to use the framework of this thread for the most part, we are going to do it within our finally bracket. So after it gets done trying everything within these brackets, it's going to go to this finally bracket. And to start an activity, it's pretty simple. There's a few ways you can do it, but the method is called start activity. I believe that's from the activity class, and yeah, it's from the activity class, so we can use that because again we're extending the activity class. And there's a few ways we can start an activity, but probably the simplest way for you guys to start out is if we hover over here, it shows that it takes an intent within its parameters, and that's what I should say. There's a few ways to set up an intent. Now we don't have an intent yet, but we're going to define one real quickly and real simply. Same way we make any other type of variable, we define the type, which is going to be intent, and and basically then we give this intent a name. So we're going to say open starting point. Basically that's going to be the intent name. Again, you guys can label that whatever. We need to import intent so we can use its sweet methods. And we're going to set this equal to new intent. And then we put up parentheses and we hit in quotations what we want our intent action name to be. And you guys might remember what the action name is, but I'll go over it again. Basically, our action name is the new com.thenewBoston.travis.starting point. And then we have to finish off this statement with a semicolon as always. And now what we're going to do is within the start activity, that's where we're going to set up our intent that we just created called open starting point. And there we go. Now it's going to open or start the activity called starting point, or based off the intent called starting point. And this intent is going to create a new intent based off of this action name. And this action name has to match up with the manifest. So just remember what I typed out here, com.thenewBoston.travis.starting point. And we set that up in a few tutorials ago, but I'm just going to re-familiarize you guys with that, with the Android manifest. I'm going to open that up, and here's the action name. So this is what we're setting our intent equal to, is this action name. So when we start an activity, it's going to look at the intent, and the intent is basically the intent of this starting name or action name. So it's going to look through the manifest, find this reference, and then it's going to be like, oh, that's of the starting point class. That's the class I'm going to start. So that's kind of how it works. So again, this reference has to be exactly the same as the reference we created in our splash activity right here for intent. Otherwise, you guys will get an error. It's always good to kind of check your program and make sure it works every so often, so you guys save yourself some time with the errors. So I'm just going to do that real quick, make sure activity works, runs for 5 seconds on the splash, and then opens our starting point class. And there you go, voila. Thanks again for watching, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial, learned something new, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a good day. What's going on, guys? Welcome to your 16th Android tutorial. And you know, I've realized that you guys have matured quite a bit in the Android world over the past 15 tutorials. I think it's about time to tell you guys about the life cycle of the activity class. And such an idiot. Alright, what we're going to do is talk about the life cycle of the activity class, like I said, because what happens now is we had our application run, but still our splash screen is there. If we hit the back button, it's going to go back to our splash activity, and we don't want that because, you know, we want a splash activity to basically kill itself after it's been displayed for the most part, because it's taking up some memory, or it potentially could take up some memory. So we're going to free up some of that memory for the most part. And that brings us to the life cycle of an activity. Now, I looked up the Android developer page. This is a great resource for you guys to use. Just search activity and it'll go to the life cycle of the activity. That's where you guys can find this. I'm just going to talk through kind of the life cycle and which methods are important for the most part. So here's what happens. An activity starts. Our splash screen, for example, starts. Then it calls this onCreate method. That's where we set up our thread and we set up our layout, our SetContentView. We set up some of all of those type of variables. And then it also calls the onStart method after it calls the onCreate method. Then it calls the onResume method. Then our activity actually starts running. That's when the user can touch the buttons that we have set up and interact with our activity. See, it has to call all three of those methods before activity actually starts. Now, if our activity is running and we get a text message, or for example, if our splash activity starts a new activity, the splash activity is going to go through an onPause and basically go through, when it's no longer visible, it's going to go through, call an onStop method. Or yeah, so basically the most important one is the onPause. But if our activity gets shut down, it's going to call the onPause, onStop, and onDestroy. So for example, if you guys are creating a game and the person gets a text message right in the middle of the game, you might want to have, you know, a method or setting up some variables or some methods that will save the data within an onPause method, because it will call that onPause method before anything else happens. So that's kind of the way that you want to think about it, is you can set up some last minute or save points or something within this onCreate method, or within this onPause method. And then once our activity gets started back up, it's going to go through this onResume method again before it starts running. So the only method that from our activity class that we are familiar with is this onCreate method. But we're going to kind of use some of these other methods as well. But what I want to show you guys is, sorry, I'm getting kind of ahead of myself here. What I want to show you guys is that we're going to use this onCreate method, but the only other two methods that are really important for the most part is this onPause method and this onResume method, because even if our activity gets destroyed, it's going to go through this onPause method before it goes through these methods as well. So we might as well set up everything within this onPause method, and we won't have to worry about these. And also the onResume method, we can set up some of our resume methods or variables that we need to set up before activity starts again. So those are going to be the three basic methods that we're going to use for activities in the future. But as for our Splash activity, we're going to get into that right now. So open up your Splash activity and hit enter right here, so we only have one bracket left. This is for our whole class. This one is for our starting method. And again, we're just going to right click, go down to source, override implement methods, and again through the activity tab we can find the method called onPause. So this is where we're going to kind of make our Splash activity kill itself, so to say, because we're just evil like that. So the way we can do that is hit finish. It's just a simple method, and it's basically going to finish the Splash activity, get rid of it, and it's going to be gone forever for the most part until our user starts up our activity or our application again. So pretty simple, but what again is happening is when this Splash activity starts, because it's the launcher item, it's going to go through this onCreate method, and it's going to run, and then basically what happens is when we call this start activity right here, the Splash activity is going to call this onPause method because it's going behind the starting point activity that's being created. So it's going to call this onPause method real quick, and that's where we're just going to finish our class. So we're going to say, hey, destroy yourself, finish yourself. And hopefully that made sense, and you guys kind of get the structure of how the life cycle works for the most part, and kind of what these methods mean, because I haven't really explained what the onCreate method is for the most part. So hopefully you guys like that tutorial and have a little bit better understanding of the activity class and how that works. So thanks again for watching. Hope you have a good day. What's up, guys? Welcome to your 17th Android tutorial for the new Boston. And what we're going to do in this tutorial is basically set up some music and set up some sound for our application, because when there's music, everything gets crazy. People start dancing, there's a riot in the street, and before you know it, you're like, Grandma, put your clothes back on, please. So, man, maybe we shouldn't add sound to our Splash activity, but we're going to do it anyways. Basically, before we get started, I want to make sure you guys have a sound or MP3 clip within your RAR folder. Now, you want to use most likely MP3 or .ogg, and again, make sure it's lowercase, otherwise it's going to give you guys problems. So what we're going to do is set up the sound variable or the sound object for the most part, and run it and play it for the most part. But before we get into that, I want to just briefly talk about the different classes we can use for music and for sounds. There's two classes that you guys are going to get familiar with when working with sound. One is called the sound pool, and the other is called media player. Now, sound pool is used for small clips like explosions, gunshots, just 1 or 2 second clips. And media player is used for pretty much everything else, like your background music for your game or whatever you guys are developing. So we're going to use the media player because not only is the sound 5 seconds long, it's also simpler to set up, and I think it's an easier sound class that you guys can use to set up. It's pretty easy, like I said, and it's going to be a media player object. So we're going to say media player like this. That's the type, and we're going to call it our sound, or our song, we should say. Again, we have to import the media player class as always so we can use its methods. We're going to set this equal to basically we're going to use a method from the media player class called create. So we're going to say media player referring to the media player class, and we're going to hit dot, and we have this create method. As you can see there, it takes a context within its parameters and it takes an int or a resource ID. Also, you can stream stuff from the internet using a URI. We'll probably get into that later, but here we go. We're going to just click this method, sets it up for us. Now the context, basically we're just going to say this, but we're going to refer to the context of this class for the most part. So we're just going to say our class name splash.this, referring to the context of this splash class. So there you go. We set up our context. Again, this is kind of Java, and we'll get into the definition of what this means later for the most part, but just realize it's the context of the splash class. For ID, we're just going to set this up just like every other ID we do, r.rar.splash sound. Now we have our media player variable set up called rsong. All we have to do now is do rsong song dot start, maybe. Yeah, we can use the method start from the media player class. Just click that and hit semicolon to finish, and now our sound's going to start. It's going to run, but let's say for example the sound clip's like 20 seconds long. We don't want that sound clip to carry over into our next activity. And also guys, I'm sorry, just before I forget, you want to define this variable and start it below the SetContentView, just for, you know, good habit. So do that, and then we're going to start our sound, but like I said, we don't want it to carry over to the next class. So what you guys might be thinking is, before this finish method, we can say rsong dot, and then we're like, oh, where's all those methods that we could use from the media player class? What's happening is we defined our variable within the onCreate method here. So we can only, or basically this rsong variable is only recognized within the onCreate method. So we can only use it within there. But to define it as a global variable for a whole class for the most part, sorry, just a variable for a whole class, we can go above our onCreate method and set up a media player and then rsong. And don't define it or anything, just set up the variable and say, hey, this is going to be a media player variable. Just kind of like we did in our other activity, we set up some variables above the onCreate method so our whole class could use it. So that's what we want to do, and then now we can use some methods on it within our onPause. But the problem is now that we're having is basically we're redefining it here, and it's still thinking of it as a local variable because we're defining it within the onCreate method. So all we're going to do is get rid of the media player right here, and now it will recognize it as a media player class or object, and they're all going to turn blue, saying that they're all pretty much the same object. So there you go, we set up our rsong, and now we can use it within our onPause method. So we're going to say rsong. Man, it is getting too late. Shouldn't be doing any tutorials. So we're going to say rsong dot and release. Now you guys can always click on some of these other methods and kind of read a little bit about them and get an idea of what they do. But we're going to use the release. Basically, this is going to kick them down that, you know, this is basically going to release the music and just say we're done with you. So we're going to hit that and end it with a semicolon, and now our song should be released when the onPause method gets called. Let's just test our activity, make sure it works. Turn up the volume here. Yeah, I created that. I'm a natural Beethoven. So yeah, it looks like our activity works and we have some sound to it now. Grandma, put your clothes back on. What are you doing? Get out of here. So yeah, it looks like it's working, and I'll catch you guys in the next tutorial. See you later. Peace. What's up guys? Welcome to your 18th Android tutorial for the new Boston. Again, it's me, Travis. What we're going to do in this tutorial is basically set up our menu, because we're going to create a lot of small applications and we just want to have a menu so we can kind of go to each activity and see what that example does. So basically our menu is going to be our activity that we want after our splash screen. So what we're going to do is we're going to just create a new class by right clicking on the package, if my computer doesn't freeze here, and then go to new class, and we're going to call this menu. Now hopefully you guys kind of get familiar with the layout of this onCreate stuff. Again, some things are probably still pretty confusing for you guys, but just stick with the series and everything will make sense at the end. Especially these next 3 tutorials, it might be a little bit confusing because it's working with a list activity for the most part. So that's going to be different, but when you guys come back to it, you'll realize everything that we've done and it's going to make sense. So just this is a nice framework that we can use. So we're going to say extends, and before we'd say extends activity for the most part, but since we want to create a list, we can use a different class called a list activity. And so this is going to extend or we can use some of the methods from the list activity after we import it. So we have to do that. And we're going to be able to use the same methods from the activity class, but we're also going to use some additional methods from the list activity class because it holds both for the most part. So we're going to go into our brackets here and we're going to create 2 methods within this class. So we're going to go to source, override, implement methods, and as you can see right here, we can pull from the list activity class and from the activity class. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the list activity and we're going to look for something called onListItemClick, and we're going to add that method, and then we're going to go into the activity class and again just get our onCreate method. For the most part, nothing too new here. What we're going to set up is a variable. It's going to be a string array, and basically what an array is it holds multiple values for basically the same variable depending on what position it is. I know that's kind of confusing, but we're going to just set it up and I'll explain it as we go. And we want this string array to be able to be accessed by both our onCreate and our list item click. And I'm just going to move this up real quickly, just because I can for the most part, above the onListItemClick. There we go. And since we want this string array to be accessed by both these methods, we're going to define it again above our onCreate method or above both methods. So we're going to say a string, and we're going to call this string classes. And to make it an array, you want to add square brackets like that, and we're going to hit this equals, and we're going to define the string array. And then I'll kind of explain what a string array is after we set it up. So what we're going to do is we're going to say again another pair of brackets right here, and then within quotations, because strings are basically like words. You can think of it like that. In programming, it's just a word. So we're going to call this first string position, let's see, starting point. The exact same name as our class name that we have called starting point. Make sure it's the exact same, case sensitive and everything, because we're going to have this application use these string positions for the most part to open a new activity. So just say starting point, and then we're going to put a comma, and we can say example 1, and then I'm just going to copy this and paste it a few times just to get some more things within our array. And I'm just it's still all in basically one line of code. I'm just copying and pasting. So we still need to enter bracket right here, and still need to finish it with a semicolon. So there we go. We have some things within our list array, and we can change these names as we go. Well, basically, I'm just going to change them for the most part right now because it'll be easy reference for you guys. So now what we can do is we can access this string array and give it a position, and it will find what position it is within the string. So, sorry, got an extra bracket there. Sorry if that confused you guys. So now, for example, we aren't going to reference it right here, but for example, we can use the variable name called classes, and within the brackets we can say 4, something like that. Now what this is going to be equal to is our class's string array the 4th position. So it always starts at a 0. So starting point is our 0 position. This will be our first position, position 2, position 3, position 4. So what this is equal to is the exact same as quotations example 4, which would be a string. So basically, hopefully that kind of makes sense, and we're going to use this more. Again, I know it's kind of confusing at the moment, but just stick with the series, guys, and everything will make sense eventually. Thanks again for watching. We basically just set up the string array, and we're going to finish this whole activity in the next couple tutorials. So I'll catch you guys then. Have a good day. What's up, guys? Welcome to your 19th Android tutorial. Again, it's me, Travis, and these are for the new Boston. What we're going to do in this tutorial is still work for our list activity that we're creating called menu. And we're just going to go within the onCreate method of this list activity. And this is generally, or what we have done in the past, we would say like SetContentView and reference a layout that we created in XML. But for this list activity, we aren't actually going to use a layout, and we're going to develop everything in Java. Just because, for the most part, I want to show you guys the Java aspect as well. So you can think of, instead of saying SetContentView, we're going to say SetListAdapter for our list activity. And then we're going to, within there, it's going to look for an ArrayAdapter, which we don't have one, and we're going to set that up. So basically, again, this will probably be kind of confusing, guys, but just stick with this. Try to follow along and just get this set up. And this is a great reference, or a great resource for the most part. I mean, this series is, because once you guys have this built, when you guys are developing your own applications, you can always go back and look at how we did some certain things, and you guys will pick up on stuff more easily as you guys get more familiar with Java and more familiar with Android and all that great stuff. So just stick with it. I promise you, later on in the series, everything's going to make sense. So what we're going to say is SetListAdapter. Like I said, this takes an ArrayAdapter or a list adapter for the most part within the parameters right here. As you can see, it takes a list adapter, but we're going to create an ArrayAdapter, which will basically, what that's going to do is take some kind of parameters or attributes, and it's going to kind of adapt it for the most part into a list adapter, if that makes sense. And since we're using an array, that's what we're going to use as the ArrayAdapter. I don't know, I thought I'd give you guys kind of an idea of what we're doing instead of making you guys completely lost as we're creating this. So we're going to say new ArrayAdapter, and then what we're going to say is a greater than sign and string, spelt like that. And basically this greater than and less than sign, basically whatever is within there, it's saying that's the type of ArrayAdapter we're creating. And we're creating an ArrayAdapter with the type string because we're working with a string array up here. So hopefully, and we're getting some errors, don't worry about that. If we once we set up our method, for the most part, we're going to just do some brackets right here, or some parentheses after we set up what type it is, and then we have to import the ArrayAdapter. So there we go, we import it, and now we're getting another error because we aren't giving it any attributes for it to kind of adapt to or convert into, you know, the thing that we're looking for. So if we hover over here, we can see kind of the different attributes or parameters that it takes within these parentheses. And we want to use the one that uses a context, an int, and a string array. So that's one we're going to click on, and it kind of sets up some stuff for us. Our context, again, we're just going to refer to the context of our class. So we're going to say our class name, menu.this, and it already has our, again, this was our string array, and it already has it set up. It says classes, and that again is this string array up here. You don't have to put those square brackets right there. It's just going to know that's a string array. So there we go. We set up that parameter, and the only other one we have left is this int. Now this is going to be maybe kind of confusing for brand new programmers, because you're like, an int, okay, or integer, I know what that is. That's like a 1, 2, 3, that's a whole number. But what we're actually going to do is kind of use a reference, and what this parameter is actually going to be is just one single list item, kind of the layout of one single list item within our whole entire list, and it's going to kind of set that up for us. but it's referred to as an int because over here in our gen folder, our R Java, just to open that up, I don't know if I showed you this as well, but these are all ints as well. Like, you know, let's see, our splash background, you're like, that's a picture, but it's referring to it as an int, and it's just kind of a reference that it's giving as a number. So don't get too confused by saying, oh, we need like a 1, 2, or some kind of number. Basically what this parameter again is going to be is just a single item within our list. And the Android SDK comes with some of these default list items that we can use. So we're going to refer to that instead of creating our own at the moment. So we're going to say Android.R layout dot, and then we have all these choices that we can choose from, and we're going to pick simple list item 1. So again, this is just setting up kind of the attributes of a single list item within our entire list. So hopefully that made somewhat sense, like some sense. I completely understand if that made no sense at all, guys. Don't worry, because again, trust me, as we go through the series you'll understand everything. So thanks again, guys, for watching. The next tutorial we're going to finish our list activity where we set up this method on list item click. So catch you guys then. Have a good one. What's up, guys? Welcome to your 20th Android tutorial for the new Boston. Again, my name's Travis. What we're going to do in this tutorial is basically work with this menu class, which is a list activity, and we'll probably take this tutorial and the next tutorial to finish this up. And again, I know this is probably really confusing and it's kind of more advanced, but I just wanted to show you guys that we can set something up in Java instead of the XML, as well as it's a great like little menu that we can use throughout the rest of this series. So I wanted to get set up now, but if you guys are confused, please don't stop with this series, because this will make, I mean, you guys will look back at this and you'll be like, oh, I understand everything that's going on. But as for now, I do realize that it's probably pretty confusing for you guys. I just wanted you guys to get this set up for the most part. But what I want to introduce you guys to, in this tutorial at least, is starting an activity. And you're like, what? We've already done that. I know how to start an activity for the most part. We do that with an intent. Well, basically I want to show you guys a different way to start an activity. And what I want you guys to do is go within this onListItemClicked method, and in the next tutorial I'll kind of break down everything that we've done, or we'll finish our application, then I'll break it down. I just didn't have time to do it in one tutorial for the most part. So I'll show you guys how to start a new activity. Again, it's pretty simple. We're going to say start activity, and again this will take an intent. So we need to create an intent, and we're going to call this intent our intent. And what we're going to set this equal to is, again, a new intent. And before we say our action name, like com, or basically com dot, you know, the new Boston dot starting point, all in uppercase, or whatever our action name was within the manifest. Now I'm going to show you guys a different way that we can set up an intent. Again, we have to import it, but we're going to set up an intent based off a class variable. So what we need to do now is set up a class variable. So again, above our intent line, we're going to set up a class variable called class, or I'm sorry, we're going to call it our class, or whatever you guys want to define this as. And what we can set this variable equal to is something, we can use a method from the class called class. So we can say type class, and we can use this method for the name, and it gives us a string within, or we need to put a string within here. So basically what we can do now is say com dot the new Boston dot Travis dot starting point. Instead of, you know, our action name was all uppercase, this is an actual class, or basically the path, a string for the path of the class starting point. And you can see that up here. Here's our package name, com.thenewboston.travis, and then we have, it looks through here, and here's our starting point class. So it's kind of a reference to that. And basically it's going to create a class variable for the string name, or for the path name of this. And then what we can do is we can set up an intent based off that class, but this intent is going to take two things within its parameters, a context and a class variable. So we're going to say, again, this current class's context, so it's called menu, it's our class name dot this. And then we're going to hit comma, and in the second parameter we're going to type our class, which is our class variable we just set up. And then we can type our intent here. So there we go. That's basically, we'll get into this error, why we're getting an error here, but in the next tutorial. I just wanted to show you guys that we can set up kind of an start an activity in this manner, where we set up a class and then we set our intent, and it uses a class variable, and then we can start our intent. That's basically the end of this tutorial. Obviously we're getting errors, but we're going to finish that up. I'm going to talk through everything in this application and kind of hopefully get you guys to understand what we've built. And then we're going to get into something really simple. So again, don't get discouraged and be like, wow, he's moving too fast, such a douche. Because I will go back and we'll kind of cover some easy stuff here. But thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll catch you then.